knowledge on seeking something higher than perhaps we typically encounter. And especially if you're here for the first time, I know that it's not always an easy thing. So I'm not here for the first time, but it feels a little bit like that because I haven't been up here in many years. But this is a very special community that in many ways will always be home to me. So I feel like this is a homecoming. So I want to thank everyone for facilitating this homecoming for me, and especially to Nilamani Prabhu, who is the personification of gentle but persistent determination. This evening I'd like to do something maybe a little bit different than is generally done. So we will look at 2 verses from the Bhagavad Gita, and we're going to look at those verses somewhat quickly. We're not going to do too much reading. And we're going to use those verses, those shlokas, which are, I think, very well known to many of us here. So if there's an opportunity, maybe we can all chant them together, and I'll have them up on the screen, God willing. But I'd like to use those verses as a springboard to discuss some lessons that we can learn from a very beautiful lila, or story, that takes place in the pastimes, the manifest pastimes of Krishna, specifically when Krishna enters Mathura. There's a very short story that's found in the 41st chapter of the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's become one of my favorite stories. It's a story of a florist or a gardener named Sudama. So this is different than the Sudama Brahmin or, Sudama the cowherd boy. Sudama, I guess, was a common name back then. But this is Sudama the florist, and we don't know so much about him, but what we know in just these few verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam, I think, have a lot to teach us. And I was especially inspired to speak on this evening because, does anyone know, there was a very auspicious occasion on the Vaishnav calendar just a few days ago. I think it was on Thursday. Yeah, so this traditional celebration known as Pushya Abhishek, which by Krishna's arrangement got turned into Pushpa Abhishek. It's actually not Pushpa Abhishek, there's a long story behind it, but somehow Krishna wanted for us to celebrate in this way. And so many years ago, starting in a community that's very dear to my heart, and maybe some of you, in Mumbai, India, they started this annual commemoration known as Pushya Abhishek or Pushpa Abhishek, offering the deities, bathing the deities in different fragrant flower petals. And so this just passed on Thursday, and then they celebrated in Mumbai just this past weekend, I think yesterday. So I felt inspired to share also, because this idea of offering flowers is very much part of our tradition. And here we find such a great role model in Sudama the florist. So there's one verse that especially comes to mind from the Bhagavad Gita, and it's a very well-known verse. Maybe we can chant it together? Yeah? Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati tadaham ashnami prayatatmanaha. Can we have a volunteer to read the English, please? Just raise your hand or indicate that you're willing to read the English. Yes, please.
If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it.
So this is Sri Krishna Bhagavan speaking. And then, very next verse, we can maybe chant this one together as well. So maybe a volunteer from this side of the room. Yes, please. Nice and loud.
Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, and whatever austerities you perform, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me.
So this is again Krishna speaking in the 9th chapter of the Gita. So we'll read a little bit of some excerpts from both of the purports that attach to these verses that Srila Prabhupada, the commentary that Srila Prabhupada offered. But before that, I want to make this a little interactive. So I want to ask, what similarities do you find in these two shlokas? What themes emerge for you? What speaks to you in these two shlokas?
Offering.
So they both speak about offering, and so one speaks about offering in maybe a more specific way, one in a more general way. And what's a common feature of this offering? I'm hearing lots of things. Sincere devotion, offering to Krishna. So offering with love, offering with remembrance, right?
You will accept it.
And then this idea of acceptance.
Whatever you do in life, all do for Krishna.
And especially in the second shloka, right? The Yat Karoshi. Yat. What does yat mean? Whatever. So it's like it can. So what you do, yat, all this repetition, right? Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you give in charity, whatever work you do. And when you see lists like this, generally in shlokas, the understanding is it's like what they call a representative sample. You know what that means? That's like, the list could go on and on and on. Krishna could have given so many, whatever you study, whatever car you buy, I don't know, whatever. Like there's so many things he could say, right? More specific, more general. But the idea, as Prabhuji mentioned here in the back, the idea is that whatever we do in our lives can be and should be offered. But not just offered with love, with sincere devotion, with, someone said, remembrance, right? When we talk about remembrance, there's intentionality behind it. When I offer something, if I'm, just imagine the experience of, since we're speaking about flowers especially, with Vishek on the mind, think about the difference, the qualitative difference between when someone is arranging for a floral bouquet for a corporate event in your office. Right? Let's say there's a big meeting and you want to decorate the room a little bit. So someone, maybe you're tasked with making a floral bouquet. So you'll try your best. You'll make it nice. Maybe you're motivated by a little fear, like you want your boss to not be displeased. But think about the difference between that floral bouquet and, for instance, when it's Mother's Day or Father's Day, or we have Valentine's Day that's coming up. I'm not going to ask who celebrates Valentine's Day, that's none of my business. But if you do celebrate any of these occasions, or have these occasions celebrated, think about the difference between that floral bouquet that's going to sit in some corporate boardroom just to look pretty, and a single rose that your child offers to you, or that you offer to your spouse or your beloved. Without me even saying more, you can imagine the difference is so vast. Even if that floral bouquet is worth hundreds and hundreds of dollars and has been put together by some professional, I'm looking at Damodar because Damodar is more skilled than any professional floral PhD. But someone even who comes close to Damodar's skill with floral arrangements. But if they're putting it together just as a business, can that even compare to that one single rose? That one single, forget rose, even just a single carnation. Right? There's no comparison. Why? Because the intentionality, the devotion, the purpose, the intention, the remembrance. Srila Prabhupada, of course, these are really beautiful purports. We don't have so much time, but Srila Prabhupada makes this point that this is essentially when we talk about Krishna consciousness, right? The International Society for Krishna Consciousness. What do we mean by that? What does it mean to be conscious of Krishna? How does that translate into our everyday lives even?
Every day remember Krishna and never forget Krishna.
So sometimes it's summed up in this beautiful sort of, you would say like a little sutra, right? Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. So what does it mean to always remember Krishna? To remember someone, of course there's a way of remembrance that's about memorizing. So children, for instance, will memorize, or even adults, you might have to memorize for some task. So you have an exam the next day, you just, like in India they call it ratifying. I don't know what ratifying, rat as a English translation, but it's a cramming, memorizing, that style of memorization. But that's not the kind of remembrance we're talking about that Srila Rupa Goswami is talking about when he says, always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. Or when Srila Prabhupada, as we'll read in just a moment or two, talks about Krishna consciousness. This kind of remembrance is more when you remember someone, when you can't help but remember them because they've captured your heart. So 24/7, all you can do is think about this person. And the most remarkable thing is when you see something that is apparently disconnected to that person, you connect it to them. Even if it's the weirdest connection to anyone else. You see a particular kind of food, some sweet or something, and because you're so in love with that object of your remembrance, of your affection, your first thought is, oh, I want this person to try it, isn't it? Even before you think about it for yourself, even before you... So that kind of remembrance, if we can try, of course that's our natural state, but because for so many reasons, so much conditioning, we've become so disconnected from that now we have to make it a practice. But if we can make it a practice to try to connect everything in some way, shape, or form with Krishna, then we're always remembering Krishna. And if we can guard against anything that takes us out of that space of remembrance, then we're being Krishna conscious, or at least we're trying to be Krishna conscious, right? So always remember Krishna and never forget him.
Example can be given like just like we breathe, we never forget to breathe because it's natural habit. Means the soul doesn't require to remember, I need to breathe it. So meeting Krishna like is your whole and soul, everything. And we never forget to breathe because it is our natural tendency of breathing.
Thank you. What is your name?
Shakshi Janardhan.
Say it again?
Shakshi Janardhan Das.
Shakshi Janardhan. Wow, what a beautiful name. Shakshi Janardhan. So Shakshi Janardhan Prabhu is, what a beautiful point, right? That remembrance is something that's as natural to us, as intrinsic to us as breathing. So, in one sense, how can we forget it? But you know what's so interesting about that analogy? And then we'll get back to flowers in a second. I'm a little worried that the flower class will turn into a breathing class. I'm going to rein you in. But it's such I love this. But you know what's so amazing about that analogy? We do forget to breathe. Have you ever forgotten to breathe? Sometimes you do. Okay, underwater, I didn't think of underwater. That's next class, we'll work that into the analogy. You know when you forget to breathe? When you're really tense. When you're really tense, when you're really scared, when you're stressed out, children especially. So what do we tell someone when we want to calm them down, when we want to help them to get back to that natural state? We tell them, okay, just breathe. Actually, even with ourselves, when we're stressed out, if you're ever stressed out, you're getting late for something. I'm always late for when I have to get a flight. And then I get there and I weigh my bag and it's like 51 pounds. That's one of the untold miseries. And then the person, and you're already late for the flight, you don't know if you're gonna make it, and you're trying to, move the thing from one bag to another. And you're so stressed, so what do? You hold your breath. Or you breathe in a very unnatural way, right? And then hopefully you have someone in your life where you can be that kind to yourself and remind yourself, just breathe naturally, just breathe through. And then we return to our natural state. So remembrance is like that. And it is natural to us, and also we need to be reminded. So we have beautiful purports like this one that remind us. Simple practices like just offering a flower, or what does we call a flower, even some flower petals. That reconnects us to that natural state. That gives us that access point to remember Krishna. So we can have another volunteer to maybe read from these purports.
Krishna wants only loving service and nothing more. Krishna accepts even a little flower from his pure devotee. He is not in need of anything from anyone because he is self-sufficient. And yet, he accepts the offering of his devotee in an exchange of love and affection. To develop Krishna consciousness is the highest perfection of life. without the basic principle of bhakti, nothing can induce the Lord to agree to accept anything from anyone. Bhakti is never casual or never causal, causal. The process is eternal. It is direct action in service to the absolute whole. Thus, it is the duty of everyone to mold his life in such a way that he will not forget Krishna in any circumstance.
So Srila Prabhupada will often speak about this theme of remembrance and forgetfulness in terms of Krishna consciousness. But I love that. I think this gives us a very clear and practical definition of Krishna consciousness, which Srila Prabhupada very boldly calls the highest perfection of life. If we can somehow or other, it's not that Krishna is obliged to accept anything from anyone. And elsewhere in this purport and other purports, Prabhupada makes the point. It's not that that Krishna is obliged to accept because someone is a very high class brahmana, or someone is a very learned scholar, or someone is very wealthy, or any of the other markers that we typically use in our material consciousness to categorize as higher or lower. Krishna is not bothered by any of that. But in another sense, Krishna is obliged. He's obliged to accept the offering of love, just like you're obliged to accept when your child offers you with sincere love, devotion, remembrance, that simple flower. Even if you want to, I don't know why you want to, but even if you want to, for something, let's say you're in a really bad mood, and you just, no, I've decided I'm not going to accept anything, but when that child presents that flower to you, you are helpless. And the most bizarre, mysterious, and I want to ask forgiveness for anyone who's here for the first time, if I'm going to confuse the heck out of you, I'm sorry, please come back. There are better speakers in future weeks. But the most bizarre, paradoxical thing that I can't even explain to you or prove to you is that Krishna, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is independent, Swaraj, in every way imaginable, is actually, he doesn't pretend to be compelled. He's actually compelled. He's actually helpless. Not just from when that rose is offered by Radharani or the most elevated gopis, but when you and I, with a little sincerity, offer some flower petals, Krishna has no choice but to accept it. He's actually helpless. So it's a great power that we have. Srila Rupa Goswami, one of our acharyas, he says, bhakti is so powerful that bhakti actually conquers the one who no one can conquer, that's Krishna. That so powerful that bhakti attracts the all-attractive. One of the meanings of Krishna is all-attractive. But bhakti is more attractive than the all-attractive. This is the power of this practice of bhakti. So we should take it very seriously. We shouldn't misuse that or take advantage of that and become complacent. That should inspire us. How amazing is this that Krishna is ready to accept our love in the form of something as simple as a flower or flower petals. Okay, I'm the master of beating analogies to death. So you have to allow me one more slide and then we're gonna go on. Even more amazing. Okay, is anyone, I'm going to pick on the mothers, although this could be fathers also, for Father's Day. I want to be equal, gender neutral in this example, but let's stick with mothers. Has anyone here who is a mother, have any of the mothers ever been gifted a flower on Mother's Day? Raise your hand. Now there's social pressure, so now all mothers are looking. Nice and high. Be proud. It's something to be proud of. Okay. Has anyone of those who raise their hands, had any of you been offered a flower that came from your own garden? Raise your hand. Isn't that amazing? You probably put in the work. You cultivated that garden. You planted the seeds. Whatever. You take care of it. And your kid went and plucked a flower from your garden and offered it to you. And how did you feel when you got offered that?
I never thought it was for me. It was me.
It's the most amazing feeling. all of the flowers in this garden of creation are all actually Krishna's property. All Krishna's roses, and all we're doing is just clipping his own flowers and giving it to him. And still he's so happy. He becomes so conquered by that. How amazing is this? We don't even need to worry about what's ours, right? Everything is his, and all we have to do is just direct our intention, our life, and offer it to him. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and we'll just discuss this for the rest of our time together this evening. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, we have this amazing, it's a very short story that's found at the end of the 41st chapter, just a few shlokas in the 10th canto. When Krishna and Balaram and some of their sakhas have entered Mathura. So of course, I think most of us here know the backstory of Krishna. In one sense, you can say he's originally from Mathura, but we really believe he's originally from Vrindavan, and Vrindavan is his home, but now he's come to Mathura. Akrura is brought him to Mathura. And this is before he actually has the showdown with his Gansmama. But there's so many descriptions of what Krishna and Balaram do in Mathura, how they enter, how they're perceived, how they're received based on the consciousness of the different residents and the desires of the different residents of Mathura, how the ladies of Mathura interact, how the priests interact. And towards the end, there's a little description given that Krishna and Balaram end up in the home, in the house of the garland maker Sudama. So this is directly from the Srimad Bhagavatam, this is the English translation. When Sudama, who we don't really know much about, but we can imagine as a gardener and a garland maker, a florist we might say today, you can imagine a pretty modest position, although in Mathura, but still maybe not among the most affluent or wealthy people in Mathura. Simple person, maybe a simple home, but Krishna, knowing the heart of this very simple florist, Krishna and Balaram, they went to his home. It's very interesting. There's no description given that Sudama ever invited them. We don't know how Krishna and Balaram ended up there. But Krishna and Balaram end up there, and Sudama just sees them, and it's described, he at once stood up and then bowed down, facing his head on the ground. Right? So this is how we receive someone. We stand to honor them. He offers his obeisance. And then he offers them seats, and he bathes their lotus feet, and then he worships them with these different articles, arghya, garlands, bonds, sandalwood things, in different presentations of all of them, so we can imagine them use some other items. By the way, this way of welcoming Krishna and Balaram that Sudama does this remind anyone of anything? Especially the pujaris among us. What is this? Yeah, this is the 16 limbed or the 16 item. They're different lists, they're different numbers, but this is what puja is. So when we do puja, whether in our homes or if for those of us who serve on the altar in the temple, what are we doing? Sometimes it's easy to get mechanical and to forget, and we're just going, I'm doing some ritual. Yes, you're doing a ritual, but what is the ritual meant to do? It's meant to remind us that what we're doing is essentially welcoming Krishna into our home, into our heart. So of course, in Sudama's case, he's literally doing this, but really because Krishna is non-different, the deity is the Lord, he's non-different from his name. So when we sit down to chant, when we sit down to perform our puja, when we sit down to read Bhagavatam and interact with Krishna in the pages of Bhagavatam, what are we doing? We're just doing the exact same thing that Sudama did more than 5,000 years ago, bless you. We're welcoming Krishna and Balaram, who is especially connected to the idea of Guru Tattva. So we can imagine we're welcoming Guru and Krishna into our lives, into our homes, into our hearts. How amazing would that be if we can just remind ourselves of that when we sit down to do puja, or when we sit down to do japa, or we sit down or stand up or walk around, or whatever services we perform. Essentially, we're just inviting and welcoming Krishna. So anyway, so there's a description given. Sudama gives some beautiful prayers. Unfortunately, I've clipped them out because, in the interest of time, but he offers beautiful prayers from his heart. And then he says, please order me, your servant, to do whatever you wish. To be engaged by you in some service is certainly a great blessing for anyone. And now before I switch to the next slide, it's a little bit of a cliffhanger. What do you think Krishna and Balaram are going to tell Sudama? Does anyone want to guess?
Garlands. Flowers.
Yeah. One guess is they're going to say, please offer us some flowers. Anyone else want to guess? Everyone's going with flowers. They're like, we've made it pretty clear this is the theme we'd like to focus on, so.
Sandalwood paste.
Sandalwood, okay, sandalwood paste. Although he's already offered sandalwood paste, so that would maybe be a little bit like, do you have any more sandalwood paste? I don't know. Anyone else? Yes? Oh, so maybe Krishna wants to do a little bargaining, right? He's a flower. That's a nice one. He's a florist. So Krishna's going to do some bargaining. One final guess before we plot twist. Think like outside the box. A Tesla, no. What is love? Okay, it was a trick question. Apparently they don't answer at all. So either they answer and the Bhagavatam doesn't record it, Srila Goswami doesn't say. But my understanding, and from my study and hearing on this topic, is that Krishna and Balaram remained silent. Perhaps just smiled at Sudama. So now Sudama said, please tell me, how can I serve you? And they don't answer. They remain silent. So why don't they answer? What do we think? Because they're satisfied? So when one's satisfied, you don't pray anything, so you just don't need to answer. But he wants to serve. Sudama wants to serve, and Krishna wants to engage his devotees in service. He's very happy when we are eager to serve. So why, what's another reason he might not have answered?
Well, it's just Sudama could understand what they wanted, so maybe from the Paramatma, Krishna revealed.
So another way of understanding this is they don't need to answer because they answered in a different way. Krishna and Balaram, from within the heart, as Antaryami, as Paramatma, they give Sudama the understanding. Does anyone know? There's a famous verse in the 10th chapter of the Gita, one of the Chaturshloki. Say it loudly.
Tesham Satya Yuktanam Pachitam Priti Purvanam.
Yeah.
Tedam Udyogam Tam Yanam.
And what is the meaning?
Krishna reveals from the heart.
As I, from within the heart, I give the understanding by which my devotees can come to me, connect with me, and love me. So, in that sense, Krishna is given within the heart. Why else might Krishna have remained silent? You have to remember, Krishna is very, as they say in England, he's cheeky. He's a cheeky lad. Yeah. There's something very sweet when you have a beloved and you say, what can I do for you? What can I get you? Maybe imagine, I don't think she's here, but my wife's birthday is coming up. So her birthday's coming up, so if I just say, okay, well, what do you want this year? What can I get you this year? She can answer, but there's also something that's like, oh, I want to see what you come up with. You figure it out. There's a sweetness there too. And then maybe one final reason, and maybe it connects a little bit to your guess. Blessing? Blessings. Yeah. Okay, so maybe Krishna wants Sudama, or Sudama is asking for what he wants to do. Krishna is offering blessings, Krishna is receiving blessings from Sudama. But there's something else. What does Sudama do for a living?
Florist.
He's a florist. So Krishna remains silent. And one way we can understand this maybe is Krishna is kind of intimating to Sudama, hey Baba, you're a florist. You spend your whole life practically making these amazing garlands. So you know what's best. You know what your gifts are. Right? We all have our particular gifts. That's not to say that that's the only thing we can do. It's not that we don't want to typecast. It's not that like if you're kirtaniya, the kirtan is your only offering. No, there's other ways of serving. But especially if we have something that we do, that's our occupation, that's part of our calling in life, that we're expert in, that we've been given some talent, some gifts in, then sometimes we don't need to look too much farther than that. Right? Sometimes we imagine, I know for myself, okay, maybe not so much with Krishna, but with Guru at least, with our teachers, with our gurus, sometimes, I'll speak for myself, sometimes I have this very romanticized, idealized notion that I'm going to go and say, Guru Maharaj, please give me an instruction. And then in my mind, in my imagination, in my fantasy, it says, yes. I've been waiting for this question. I've been waiting for you. Oh, Venkata Bhatta, Das, Prabhu, go to Antarctica and open a temple. Create an eco-village. And the world will glorify you. You know how many times that's happened in my life? Exactly 0. What usually happens is there's standing instructions. There's standing wisdom. Our gurus, they teach us, and then they expect us to use the principles to figure out how to serve in the way that is most authentic to us. That's going to look different than the person next to us. That's going to look different than my godbrother who's, reaching millions of souls and whatever, doing his service in his particular way. It's going to look different than the kirtan that's offered by my god sister who sings so beautifully that it's as if a Gandharva has just appeared. It's going to be what I can offer in this moment in my own way. That's what Krishna is going to be happiest with. That's what Guru wants me to do, right? So sometimes we have these idealized notions, but Krishna gives us the indication. Know yourself. Use your discernment. Use your own understanding. Quiet your mind down and listen to the voice of Paramatma. And so, in a sense, this is what we have here. This is one way we can understand it, I want to suggest. Shukadeva Goswami says, O best of kings, speaking to Parikshit Maharaj, having spoken these words, right? Sudama speaks these words, please tell me, and then Krishna doesn't answer, but Sudama understands. He could understand what Krishna and Balaram wanted. Thus, with great pleasure, he presented them with garlands of fresh, fragrant flowers. Now, Srila Prabhupada, before this portion of the Bhagavatam was translated, this portion of the Bhagavatam was translated after Srila Prabhupada left his body, left this world. But we have Prabhupada's more summary study style translation of this same section in the Krishna book. So this is how Prabhupada puts it. The florist Sudama was greatly pleased within his heart by seeing Krishna and Balaram in his place, and thus, as his choicest desire. Isn't that interesting? Sometimes we're very hard on ourselves and hard on one another. That, no, we should be desireless. Anya vilashita shunyam. We have to, our desire is the problem. But we find over and over again in these stories, there's variety. There's these devotees. It's not mechanical. It's not rote. It's not just stereotyped. That every devotee has their own desire. And Krishna wants that desire to be engaged, but he wants that desire to be directed back towards its natural source that's going to give us all the fulfillment that we're looking for. And so isn't it interesting, Srila Prabhupada says, as his choicest desire, Sudama's choicest desire, he made 2 exquisite garlands of various flowers and presented them to the Lords. So the Bhagavatam goes on, beautifully adorned with these garlands. So Krishna and Balaram accept the garlands. Beautifully adorned with these garlands, Krishna and Balaram were delighted, and so were their companions. The 2 lords then offered the surrendered Sudama, who was bowing down before them, whatever benedictions he desired. So now Sudama has said, please engage me in your service, which, by the way, does that sound familiar? What does that sound like a translation to? the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. This is one of the ways Srila Prabhupada said, probably the most often translation, quote unquote, translation of the Mahamantra, which is just a collection of 3 names in the Bhakti. So calling out 3 names. But Prabhupada and our acharyas, they explain calling out those names, like they say, read between the lines. If you read between the lines of the calling out of those names, there's a prayer. And what is the prayer? Please engage me in your service. Please, Krishna, Balaram, please, Radharani, please engage me in your service. And so Sudama made that prayer. The essence of the Mahamantra, Sudama is actually praying to Krishna and Balaram in person before him. And he gets to offer the fulfillment of his whole life, his whole calling in life, right? Can you imagine making all the garlands? How many garlands did Sudama make over his lifetime? Who knows, but probably. But it was like all those garlands were the dress rehearsal. All those garlands were the practice. And now, Krishna and Balaram receive the culmination of everything that Sudama poured into all those garlands. And now they're so pleased that they say, now the roles are reversed, and now they say, please ask, what can we do for you? What benediction? This is, in every culture you'll find, there are stories of great beings, whether the divine himself, or gods and goddesses, celestial beings, angels, or supernatural beings like genies. Do you know where genies come from? The idea of the genie? Does anyone know?
Lamp.
You know?
Story.
Some
Arabic story.
Some Arabic stories, yeah. Because in the Arabic culture, I think even pre-Islamic, but definitely in Islam, they have this idea of the jinn. So that becomes jinn in English. So jinn, they're not exactly like devatas necessarily, but they're like they have some power, some potency, some siddhis, and they can give you whatever you wish for. But a lot of the theme of these stories is be careful what you wish for, because then you ask for one thing, you end up with another thing, there's a problem. I don't know if anyone has read the Shastra known as Aladdin. There's a whole, no? Oh my gosh, it's a tough crowd tonight. Aladdin, yes. Aladdin, the genie. So the genie offers how many wishes usually in these stories? 3 is the magic number. And as every school child knows, what is the smartest answer? What do you ask for?
More wishes.
More wishes, unlimited wishes, infinite wishes. That's usually not allowed. There's some fine print, right? But let's say unlimited wishes is out. What else could you wish for? You could wish for anything. Anything, everything under the sun, the moon. What is Sudama going to ask for? His benedictions. Some of you may know this, so I'm afraid to ask you because we'll spoil the next slide. But Sudama actually, it's not said that Krishna offers him 3 benedictions, but Sudama actually ends up choosing 3 benedictions, so it works with the whole theme. 3 wishes, 3 magic wishes.
And how did Sudama knew that it was Krishna the Lord? How did he know?
How did Sudama know that Krishna was the Lord? I don't know. And I don't think we're even told that Sudama knows that Krishna is the Lord in terms of knowing in an academic sense. But throughout the Bhagavatam, what we find is these great devotees, they just express their love and devotion. So do they know, does he know in a way that can be proven, that can be...
He would do that for anybody?
No, not that he would do that for anyone, but out of his bhakti as a devotee, he knew in his heart that this is the object of my love. How did Shabari know who Ram was when Ram came to her ashram? She knew. But we're never told that how did she know and who figured out and did she test it? No, she knew. He knew because he knew through the eyes that are smeared with the ointment of love. And anyway, this is going into another subject, but in Vrindavan, most of the residents of Vrindavan, they don't even know. But they know, because they love Krishna. They love Krishna not because he's God, but they love Krishna because he's the most amazing object of love. So Sudama sees Krishna and Balaram, and of course he offers prayer, so he acknowledges their divinity, but he also just sees them as the most supreme objects of love, of devotion, of adoration. But now he's going to ask for benedictions, or he's going to Yeah, he's going to ask for benedictions. And he chooses 3 benedictions. So the Bhagavatam tells us Sudama chose Vavare. Vavare, the word means chose. So he gives his choice. He asked for 3 things. He asked for unshakable devotion for Krishna, the supreme soul of all existence. He asked for friendship with the Lord's devotees. Tad bhakteshu cha soharadam. Soharadam suhrit. That deep, deep friendship, heart friendship. May I have unshakable devotion for you, Krishna, who are the supreme soul of all existence. So he knew. May I have friendship with your devotees, but what kind of friendship? A deep, heartfelt friendship, not a superficial relationship, not you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, what can you do for me, transactional, but a deep, heartfelt friendship. And then recognizing maybe that who is actually, he says, tad bhakteshu, but who is a bhakta of Krishna? Ultimately, it's everyone, it's every living being, is our constitutional position. Is to be Nitya Krishna Das. So perhaps with this in mind, not wanting to leave anyone out, what does Sudama say so beautifully? He says, and Bhuteshu Chid Dayam Param, transcendental compassion for all living beings. Jivada. Bhuteshu Dayam. This is what Sudama asked for. Unshakable faith and devotion for Krishna, friendship, association with devotees, and compassion for all living beings. Fast forward. Only about 500 years ago, that same Krishna and Balaram came to us as Shishi Gaurnitai. And that same Krishna who was asked these 3 things, you know what's amazing? Krishna took notes. Sudama, I don't know, but let's just go with me here. The class is almost over. Krishna took notes. When Sudama asked these 3 things, Krishna said, these 3 things, this is amazing benedictions. I'm going to take note of this. And when he came again as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in the form, who was Krishna himself, in the form of his own devotee, to teach us, to experience the love that Radharani has, and to teach us, to exemplify for us how to have that, how to aspire to that kind of bhakti, that kind of devotion. Krishna remembered those 3 things that Sudama asked for, and he gave it again. He spoke it to his very intimate devotee, Sanatana Goswami. And listen to what he says. He says, hear this, O Sanatana. Compassion to all living beings, Jiva Daya, deep taste for the holy name, Nam Eruchi, and service to the Vaishnavas, Vaishnava Seva. Ihachar dharma nahi shuna sanatana. He says, hear this, Sanatana. These 3 things, compassion to all living beings, deep taste for the holy name, and service to the Vaishnavas. Apart from these, there is no other thing such as dharma. In other words, this is what is the essence of all dharma. Dharma sar is these 3 things. That unshakable faith and devotion for Krishna that manifests particularly in our deep taste for the holy name. Especially for us in Kali Yuga, how do we experience that deep, firm connection, absorption in Krishna is through his holy name. So, Namaruchi. And then, what is the essence of deep, heartfelt friendship with Vaishnavas is Vaishnav Seva. When we really love someone, when we have that deep friendship, what is it but Seva? We want to serve them, we want to associate with them, we want to learn from them. To the extent that we have something to teach to our juniors, we can teach them. In this dynamic way, we can engage in real, loving relationship with Vaishnavas. And even if we can't do that with every being, at least let us carry compassion in our hearts for all beings. If we can do these 3 things, or at least aspire for these 3 things, then we will be practicing Krishna consciousness, and then we will be practicing the essence of all religion, of all dharma. Anyway, just to bring our story to a close, back to Sudama and Krishna. Krishna and Balaram were so pleased. Not only did Lord Krishna grant Sudama these benedictions, but he also awarded him strength, long life, fame, beauty, and ever-increasing prosperity for his family. And then Krishna and his elder brother took their leave. Srila Prabhupada writes in this regard in Krishna book that Krishna proved that those who are Krishna conscious devotees will not be lacking in any way. Sometimes we come into the association of devotees, or we hear some class or some teaching about, trying to not be motivated by anything else and just service for service sake. And we have this slight doubt somewhere in the back of our minds, but what about all of my other needs? What about all these other things? Will I just be the loser in the end? Krishna, Srila Prabhupada and our acharyas, they tell us the devotee will not be the loser in the end. Because Krishna seeing this just as not even as the main benediction. The main benediction is what Sudama asked for, Krishna gave it. But as a side benefit, just, what you get, the thing you get on the side for free, that I'll just throw this in anyway, or something, you're such a nice person, I'll just throw this in. What Krishna throws in is what the world is hankering after. Srila Prabhupada says, Krishna proved that those who are Krishna conscious devotees will not be lacking material enjoyment of sense gratification. They will have sufficient opportunity for such things, but after leaving this body, they will be allowed to enter the spiritual planets of Vaikuntha Loka or Krishna Loka or Goloka Vrindavan. In other words, our material needs will also be taken care of by Krishna's arrangement in the way that Krishna wants, in a way that will help us to grow in our bhakti, not go farther away from him. But he'll still take care of even our so-called material needs. But more importantly, Krishna will preserve what we have, provide what we lack, and take care of our deepest spiritual needs and what we're hungering for. So as we close, I just want to ask everyone to just take a moment, and you can take this with you. I know we're at the end of our time now. You can take this with you and reflect on this, but please do this tonight, before bed or as you're winding down your evening. Please take the time. What can we learn from this story? How can we take what Sudama experienced 5,000 years ago? If you accept this as a historical story, then this happened thousands of years ago. Even if you don't accept it as a historical story, please don't just take it as a nice, fairy tale or nice mythology, just to, take out some lesson, take out something that can inspire you today, tomorrow, next week, that can show up to you at work or with your family or in your own practice of spiritual life. What can we learn from this? How can we infuse and enthuse our bhakti by following the example of this very simple but pure-hearted florist, Sudama? And perhaps the next time we go in front of the deities, of course we have the deities here, but I also want to share this darshan of some exquisitely beautiful deities, not too far from us in New York City, at the Bhakti Center, Shri Radha Murlita and Gaurachandra Mahaprabhu. The next time we stand before or kneel before or sit before our deities or the deities in the temple communities that we're a part of, or wherever we may find ourselves, and we're praying, let's be specific about what we're praying for. And we can follow the example of Sudama, and we can ask for that benediction, those 3 wishes that are much better than asking for infinite wishes or asking for the newest Tesla or asking for whatever else may come into our minds or hearts. But we can follow this example of asking for the kind of connection and consciousness of Krishna that great devotees like Sudama manifested and exemplified for us. Please forgive me for going over time. Thank you so much. Shri Gauranitai ki jai. Thank you. I don't think we have time for questions or comments, right? No. Anyway, thank you. Please, yes, go on to enjoy prasad, and I think there may be a few announcements. No? Okay, no announcements, just prasad. Thank you again. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Prabhupada ki jai.
Please let's give 3 loud Haribols to His Grace Prabhu, a wonderful presentation of Krishna meeting the florist Sudama. Haribol.
But somehow